and Nurse Alice show. Alice, what up,
Yay.
dude?
Hello, I am well. How about yourself?
not the like, hi, I'm beautiful, I'm perfect, I'm
Hello.
lovely.
No, I'm actually having a good day, and I think it shows. When you look good and you feel good, things are you're making progress. You just feel good, and it's just radiating
I
sunlight,
mean,
positive energy.
come on, radiating sunlight, positive energy. Listen, it is you know, it's wild. So I don't know, those of you y'all are watching. By the way, of course, we're going to talk a little bit about the lawsuits that are going on with Ozempic. We also
Mm-hmm.
are going to talk about the drama with Andrew Huberman. We definitely
Ooh.
want to know your thoughts. We are right now
Mm-hmm.
streaming on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Did I get them all? Yeah. So
Did you? There's five.
uh I feel like maybe I left somebody out, but wherever you are.
YouTube, Instagram, Facebook,
Yeah.
X, and
Oh, Twitter. That's what I forgot. Twitter. Listen,
X.
leave your comments. We want to hear what
Yes.
you're saying. We can see the comments. We'll pull them up.
Mm-hmm.
Let me get the chat going on right here. There we go. We'll pull the comments up so we can read that. We want to respond to those. So that's what we're talking about today. But okay, I don't know about some of y'all are like a little woo-woo like me, Alice. I don't know if you are. Like, I listen to my little astrology podcast every week.
Okay. Okay.
She gets me all together about like where I am with my star or my sign,
Are
and
we in
like
retrograde or something?
Mercury's about to go retrograde. Mercury is about to go retrograde, and
Okay.
well, no, it starts today and it does for like the next 3 weeks, and it's retrograde in
Mm,
Aries, which is a whole thing. I mean, I'm not like that good at it, but all I know is
I'm not
that
either.
this thing, I already have like technology issues. And then whenever Mercury retrogrades, I like really have technology
Mm-hmm.
issues. And
Mm-hmm.
I already know that it started already today. And I just have to like literally right now, we're supposed to be live on Instagram, on my Instagram, but
I
I'm not
think we're
live.
live. I'm on live
I'm
on
not,
Instagram.
I'm not live. Mine won't let me go.
Listen, but we're still gonna do it. We're still gonna
Yep.
have a wonderful, amazing show. We got lots of great information, which by the way, I just want to say, Dr. James, this is for informational purposes only. Although, yes, I am a nurse practitioner and healthcare provider. Although Dr. James is a nurse practitioner and a healthcare provider, we are here providing information to help empower you with the tools, knowledge, skill set, and things that you need so you can go back to your healthcare provider and have an intelligent, informed conversation so you can make healthier choices.
I like
Please
it.
do not stop taking something, doing something just because you heard it on the Instagram, whether it's us or someone else. Please don't do
Right.
it.
Like, just, this is not officially medical advice, y'all. So
Correct.
don't get crazy. Just don't. We're not going to officially recommend anything, like regardless of what we say. Don't, whatever. Even though we're very smart and
Right. I might share some things that I would say to a patient, but unless you are my patient and we are in that setting and that a relationship is established in that moment, informational purposes only.
yeah, informational purposes
Yes.
only. Also, that's the other thing I've been doing lately. I don't know why. I feel like I feel the need to like sing everything.
Oh, I
So
like it. I
like,
like it. I
I
wish
mean,
I could sing. I can't sing.
but I can't. I can't sing. That's the
It
problem.
sounded like you had little vocals there. It looked like you me. It sounded like you had a little something going on there. Now I am from a family who I'm half black, half Filipino. I don't know if y'all know this, but in Filipino culture, karaoke is the thing. And everybody just knows they can just tear up a Whitney Houston song, and we cannot. But no, we can't sing a lick. It just skipped over me. Nobody in my family can sing.
But
Maybe
but you're
generations
gonna do it.
before.
You're gonna do it anyway. It's
Yeah.
tearing up my heart when I'm with
With
you.
you.
You said tearing up, and then made me think of it. Also, speaking of singing,
Yeah.
Friday was Beyonce Day. Cowboy Carter has been on repeat in this household
I love
all
it.
weekend long.
I love it.
All
I
weekend long.
love
Wait,
it.
I should have pulled out my little cowboy hat.
Oh, you should have. You
I got
should have.
I
Yes.
got
But you
I got a little cowboy hat here somewhere.
but you
It's from Renaissance. It's from the Renaissance one,
oh
the
yeah.
concerts. It's got my
Yeah,
little
you were in the
diamonds on
video,
it.
by the way. Dr. James was in the final scene when he was like at the beach on the rocks with like water and wind in his hair. At the end of it. Yes, I love it. Strike a pose.
Posing for the
Pose.
gods. I mean, when they reached out to me, Alice, when I got a DM from Parkwood, I was like, this has got to be a fake. This has got to be a whatever. Like, I was like, there's no way Beyonce people reach out to me and they're like, we love this video. We're wondering if we could use it, whatever. And I was like, you can do whatever you want. Right.
Absolutely.
Yes. Bianca can do whatever she wants. The other thing, and I feel like this is our little hot topic segment that we didn't even call it, but the other thing, I know some folks are streaming this while also watching the LSU Iowa women's basketball game right now.
Oh yes, that's a good one. That's gonna be a good.
It's already been lit. This game has been wild. It literally is. It's on my little iPad. Is right here. I've been watching it on the iPad while I was getting ready for the show, and then just like I told y'all on my Instagram stories earlier, I paused it.
Yes, I love how women's basketball has turned around. You know, I mean, obviously, first there was no women's basketball, then we have it, and now like even the collegial part of it's becoming some like almost more watched than the men. I'm just saying it is. But these women are some fierce athletes. They got the game face on, and I like the attitudes. I like the confidence that's out there, and you're supposed to, men do it all the time. So I've heard some people say, oh, well, they're arrogant. They're this, they're doing what, come on. It's part of the sport when you are. And I think, Angela Reese said it well. She said, they're friends off the court, but once they're in the lines, she said, it's all game. It's all game. Right. May the best person win. We'll be friends after we walk off the court. So
right. No friends between the lines. And I mean, they both have started off playing really well and being the stars that they are. And they and the big shout out to it's technically not Women's History Month anymore, but we're going to talk about it anyway. Big shout out to all the women who
is that
right. It should be every day, but to the women who paved the way. It wasn't just Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and
absolutely.
All these other women, Camila Cardosa and like whoever, right? Like it's women who paved the way for the generation
Lisa
before
Leslie,
them.
A bunch of
and even way back in the day, right? Women. My mom's played 6-on-6 half-court women's basketball in Iowa in like the 60s or whatever, because they didn't think that women would ever be able to get the energy to run up and down an entire court, and that they needed to be 12 people on the court instead of 5, or 10. So just all of that paved the way for. Now the women's games have been averaging more viewer eyeballs throughout the entire tournament than the men's game. So
I love it.
Big ups to that. Also, if you're in the chat, don't tell me the score of the game. I don't turn my whatchamacallits off with notifications off because I don't want to know. I don't want to know. As soon as this is done, I'm going back to that game. I'm putting that game on.
Right.
But I feel like, what we have to. So first of all, I really apologize for wherever y'all are watching. I don't know why my Instagram is not working, but hopefully we're on Alice's Instagram. If you're watching on Alice's Instagram, maybe I'll just do my phone on Instagram Live and just tell people to go. I don't know, whatever. But we are on LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, all the places.
Yes.
And other than Instagram. Instagram.
But you know what, James, when you were talking about don't tell you the score, speaking of people telling and running that, I'm not necessarily a listener of this gentleman's podcast. I'm not part of his following, I should say, but some stuff that's been brewing, and I think this gentleman better than I do. Andrew Huberman. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of ladies that have a lot to say, together about the same man, but that's just the side note, the tea. There's more to this, but James, I'm gonna let you kick that off because I'm just really learning who Andrew is. But by the way, it's fascinating. It has been deeply fascinating learning about this individual.
Right. Well, and okay, so just to catch some folks up. Whatever. So Andrew Huberman it is Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's a PhD. He's a neuroscientist. By the way, hi to folks on Instagram. I'm literally doing you Instagram on my phone while I'm doing everybody else on the camera right above it. Okay. So we're just going to look a little crazy and that's all right. I'm kind of crazy anyway. So Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist. Mm-hmm. has a lab. We'll start there. He has a lab
Does he?
at Stanford. Does he? Does he have a lab? He has a lab at Stanford University, and
A little lab.
he has a huge, ginormous podcast, monster podcast. He is a
Okay.
frequent guest on Stupid Joe Rogan's show and all different kinds of people's shows. Okay, so that's your level set. He
Dr.
has
Stanford, huge following. Gotcha.
Dr. Stanford, PhD at Stanford, big following. He has developed a ginormous, huge cult following. And people like, I was going to say live and die, but I don't mean that actually, like not actually live and die, but people really, really like trust and believe in all of the things that he says, because when you're listening to him and you listen to these podcasts or you read his things, it sounds like you're in science class. And
sounds smart.
Yeah. And there's this measure of like using big words but also being approachable at the same time. I think he also is like, he's a really good looking dude.
Yeah. I checked him out on the internet. I said, okay. Yeah. I might invite him to the barbecue based on.
But just based on the look. But so but he's also like approachable, right? Like he's like, and he like works out and he does all this stuff. So this whole like bro, like wellness bro culture that has really sort of taken over in the last few years has really helped him explode in many different ways. Well, there are lots of people. So Dr. Andrea Love, who was part of Unbiased Science podcast. They are since kind of doing their own independent thing right now, but there's been a bunch of, they're really big on it. There's a bunch of other scientists, PhD, physicians, nurses, all kinds of people who have been like, hold up, time out, wait a minute. And the biggest thing that Andrew Huberman is doing that I think scientists and health and medical professionals take issue with is that he will often really stretch what you can do with the science. So we talk a lot about this in the science. Like, listen, the research is early. It's only been done on mice. Like, you can't extrapolate to the general population.
Right.
About research, particularly if it was only done on mice or other animals. But you know, there was a really interesting study that I talked about, or actually we have a little video about it coming out. But that this study was done on 44,000 middle-aged folks who lived in one city in China. So it's very interesting. It's really fascinating science. But I cannot say that the middle-aged people who live in one city in China represent the entirety of the global population. They certainly don't represent me. So you can't necessarily take those. I got people in here asking me for nudes in the other live. I love it. Sorry, no nudes in the live today. So they got people. You can't take that and then just be like, well, unequivocally, everyone should be taking magnesium daily or whatever the recommendation is, right? So there's been some of that. He really stretches how far we can actually go with our confidence behind the science. And he hawks some supplements and he gives a lot of really credence by being Stanford and a PhD to some things that are maybe kind of pseudoscience, like we just don't know. But he's got such a big power and influence right now. And then he does things like go on Joe Rogan's podcast many times, the biggest podcast in the world, and say stuff that like is just not maybe necessarily true. And then to be like, well, it worked on rats, so it must work on humans.
You know, this was really interesting when you shared this story with me. First off, I was like, who is this? So I was like, okay, nice looking, easy on the eyes. When you say Stanford, PhD, I'm like, okay. The social proof is there, right? He truly is academic. He earned his degree, I'm sure. But, you know, just the association to say with your Stanford. So it's like eyes open up, ears perk up. It's like, okay, this is someone who's credible by virtue of who they're affiliated with. And then, like you said, using those big words. And I'm sure, you know, he sounds very intelligent. And then when you stretch I'm going to go ahead and say stretch the research or the data. And you can say, well, research shows, or, although it's only been done in rats, blah, 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 blah. Unless there's been something that's proven to be harmful, I think that's where he gets away with stretching the science, and where a lot of people get away with stretching the science. But this is basically, to me, someone who very well in the academic area, who also, by the way, and correct me if I'm wrong, James, is he the founder, owner, or does he have stock in AG1? Because when we talk about like vitamins and minerals and things like that, it sounds like he's done a lot of presentations and talking about, AG1 vitamins. Now, listen, that's going to be for a whole nother episode for y'all. Like, what are AG1 vitamins? Although James, I'm sure, is going to tell you in a second here. But it just, all of us, I just feel like all of a sudden we're talking about him. Why? All of a sudden, why are we talking about this man? What happened? You have, and the backstory, which is what I started with, is because he's handsome, he's smooth, he likes the ladies. The ladies love him, and he's had quite a few ladies. And these ladies basically figured out he was talking to all of them at the same time. And now they have this story to tell about how they've been manipulated and played and this and that. At the same time, we're talking about him and his AG1. So I don't know. I just kind of thought, I saw this story and I'm like, one, why does he have such a big following? That can be dangerous in and of itself, in the sense, especially if he's stretching data that's not really backed by science. But then two, I was like, what happened? Why are we talking about him? So I also thought, and this is just my, I don't know what you want to call this, petty mind. The little bit of petty I have in my mind was like, did these ladies come forward to talk about him to kind of just get even more people talking about him, because it's going to lead to the conversation about AG1, which are his products, which are going to sell. And so I don't know, James.
Was this like a PR stunt or something?
Was this a PR stunt? That's really kind of what I was thinking about.
I mean, listen. I'm of two minds of that. Listen. Andrew Huberman has millions of people listening to his podcast, like monthly. He makes gang of money. When he is a frequent guest on Joe Rogan, like to me, you don't need any. They say all press is good press, which I don't agree with, but I don't think this was a PR thing at all, because this man, enough people know about Andrew Huberman, at least the people who want to know about him.
Right. But who are those people though? Who are those people that want to know about him? Are those the people that are being, like you mentioned that he had somewhat of a following, like a cult. So these are people who like hang on to his every word, believe everything that he says about the science. Is that who follows him? Is that like, because the reason why I'm talking about saying that is because it's, there's nothing wrong with having a large following, as long as you're using your platform for good, I would say, right? Please don't mislead or harm people with the information you're sharing. Is he sharing information that's harmful or potentially harmful? Is he?
Yeah. I think in some instances he is. I mean, I'm just looking right now, like according to Time Magazine, he 6 million followers on Instagram, 5.1 million subscribers on YouTube. Those are both old numbers, so that's probably higher. As of January, he had the third most popular podcast in the United States. Okay. And he is a frequent guest on the most popular podcast on earth. So, I mean, but what I think, because this is something that Alice, you and I think have really unique experience with. You and I understand that there's an appetite for people to want to learn about their health in the media and on social media. That's why we do what we do. I literally wrote my dissertation about this. But like there's a power in social media in doing this. So what I think he just strikes he just hits the sweet spot for a lot of people of being good looking, having these credentials behind him, sounding really smart, but at the same time being approachable. So you can listen to him. And the rise of podcasts, I think the rise of COVID really helped, because lots of people were tuning into podcasts during COVID. So a lot of people mistrust the healthcare system, like you and I understand, often for very, very good reason. Yeah. So there's also a rise in like anti-establishment in terms of like vaccines and like what is healthy eating, big pharma, things like that. Now, he's not necessarily anti-big pharma, anti-vax, none of that. I'm not saying he is, but this sentiment around people in general having such incredible passion around their health and around being like, well, the system is screwing us. There's got to be another way to do it. And then you hear this good looking guy who's also kind of easy to talk to or easy to listen to. And he sounds super smart, but you also kind of get it at the same time, even if you're not in healthcare. And he's the chief scientific advisor for AG1 Greens.
Athletic Greens. Yep.
He's lending himself to being like, I'm the scientific advisor for Athletic Greens. So that puts credibility behind Athletic Greens when, I mean, AG1 Athletic Greens might be dope. We don't really know because they don't tell us what exactly their ingredients are and in what doses in their ingredients, right? So we don't know if that magical plant that you found in Uruguay, how much of it is in there that's actually, supposed to cure me of heart disease or whatever. Like we don't know these things.
It's proprietary. That's what they're saying, which is why they won't share that information.
But he puts his PhD and his Stanford lab and his millions and millions of followers behind something like that. And I think that there's an appetite for that. And people really get into it. And he's like, well, the research says this and the research says that and the research says whatever. Now, you and I know half these health experts out here talking in the media and on social media, whatever, don't even read the damn research in the first place. So this dude's talking about how he reads the research. But then back to your point, Alice, what happens is, does he have too much power? Because people are blindly trusting what he's saying when at the end of the day, you're like, hold up, we just had this whole podcast conversation and he recommended X, Y, and Z. And he was like, you need to get your son. The first light you should see should be sunlight. And I don't know what some of his recommendations. And it's really based on science that was done on rodents, not on humans.
Right.
So is it like lying by omission? Is it like lying by can you be free with the research, right? Like, hey, there's an association, so
well, here's the thing. I think he's more of a who's going to check me, boo, because there's this research that's been done in animals. Is there anything so what others can say is, well, there's been no research in humans to really support that, to really back that up. And so he might be of the sense of like, well, where's the research says that it is harmful? It's kind of, sometimes you can look at research, while as helpful as it is, as groundbreaking as it's been with helping advance healthcare, sometimes research can be, just depending on how you look at it, you can really kind of make it say the results, interpret it the way that you want to interpret it sometimes, right? And if there's nothing to counter it, because like, for example, let me go and throw it out there, vaccines. People are like, well, there's no research that shows that these vaccines really help. Was there anything that says that they don't help? They're new. I mean, like, so, I think he gets away with, and I shouldn't say get away as if he's doing something completely wrong, right? He could be right. I don't have enough information or evidence to counter him in a sense, right? But I do believe that some of the things he might say might be misleading in which the way he says it, especially to an audience who's so novice and really isn't as familiar with the research and what a good study is, what a bad study is, and how can we generalize it, not generalize it. He's talking to an audience who, for the most part, just wants to be healthy. So they're going to cling on to anything that can provide some form of hope or help with them trying to live a healthier life.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's really fascinating.
It is.
It's also really fascinating too. The part of the reason we're talking about a lot of this too is so this guy is such a huge name. But then there was a big article that came out in New York Magazine last week called Andrew Huberman's Mechanisms of Control, the Private and Public Seductions of the World's Biggest Pop Neuroscientist. Pretty intense feature. This thing is like 88,000 words or so. I don't know. This thing is like crazy long.
People are studying his life. It's like his whole life has now been placed under a microscope. Like, who is this individual? Why is he able to yield so much power? And then, and there, and I'm not saying this about everybody with a PhD, but sometimes people with PhD, I've worked with neurologists, love neurologists, by the way, but sometimes, especially neurosurgeons, let me say that, very unique characteristics in their personality is it's unique in a sense. Mm-hmm. And so
What?
I
I mean, I listen, from one doctorally prepared person to Andrew Huberman. Listen, y'all, you got to be a little something to go through all of this
all
stuff
of
in
that.
academia. And I think one of
Right.
the things we learned, like I love higher academia, I love higher education, but at the same time, part of the reason I love it is because I also see that it's not. I gotta be real careful how I say this, but it's not like there are other avenues, there are other ways. Like just having a doctorate doesn't make you better than somebody else. It just makes you really good and specialized at the thing that you're good and specialized at. But
There
I
you
think
go.
we put these people, sometimes we put
On a
academic
pedestal.
institutions on a pedestal, we put people on a pedestal that isn't necessarily deserved. And one of the things, Alice, I know people have come at you and I about this in the past as well, but sometimes he's been talked about for talking way out his lane, like
Okay.
way out of his lane.
Stay in
He
your
is
lane.
a PhD neuroscientist, and he's an associate professor in their neuroscience lab in ophthalmology. But dude will be out here talking about some things that are way maybe out of his scope. And so I think you and I are very like careful and respectful of that. Like
Yes.
I was just talking about last week on this show, we were talking about colorectal cancer awareness. I was on local TV talking about colorectal cancer awareness, but by no means do I ever like posit myself a colorectal surgeon or an oncologist. Like I'm not, but
I'm a colorectal patient. I've had my colonoscopy.
right. But as someone who is educated
Right.
and in
True.
healthcare and a generalist and these things, right? I do
Yeah.
have more knowledge than the average bear, and I'm going to share it with y'all. That's what I'm going to try to do. But I think what separates some people, and I think where people are really coming down on this is dude has some kind of sketchy behaviors when it comes to women in particular. Super sketchy behaviors when it comes to like collaborating with people, with like just being respectful of other people's time. And then I think we do have to sort of question, you have someone who has this monster amount of followers and just treats the research like it's garbage. And I will compare him to Dr. Mike, right? Who is the biggest healthcare social media influencer on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And this man had 26 million followers across platforms and millions of views on every YouTube video and all these other things. And Dr. Mike talks about how to survive in this game, you got to play a little bit of the game, of the social media game, right? You got to have the icon, thumbnails on YouTube that are a little bit like clickbaity and stuff like that. Like that's all part of the game. But then in that very video, he will be like, well, listen, this is what the research says. This is what the research does not say. So we have no conclusive answers. We can maybe extrapolate this to X type of population, but we need more research about this. But let's have a nuanced conversation about it rather than using a bunch of scientific terms that just get just enough over people's head, but that you still get them to buy into and go buy your supplement. Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Well, speaking of supplements, right?
Come on, transition. Well, listen. I'll take a little break here with you, and I'm gonna let you jump into this next one, Alice. We definitely want to know what you think about this. We are right now. We're live on the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the LinkedIn's, and the X's. I gotta talk it in my Midwestern on the Facebooks. So drop your comments in there. We can see them. I'm checking off to the side too, individually on the apps. If you've got thoughts about Huberman, as well as our next topic, or you just want to, shoot shit or whatever, let us know.
Yes, I agree. And where I was going with that was supplements, because the AG1 supplements, that's where I was going. But it is a transition also to our next topic here, James. I don't know. I'm pretty sure you've seen this. And this is kind of an extension from our last conversation. For those of you who joined us last week, we were talking, was it last week?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was last week.
Yeah.
Gosh, time flies so fast. We were talking about the weight loss injectables, right? Kind of a spinoff from Oprah's special that she did, weight loss injectables are just absolutely in the news. Everyone, it's the rave of things now when it comes to weight loss. However, it's in the news also, not just for that, but for other things. And those are the growing number of lawsuits as a result of the weight loss injectables. So I guess, James, what we probably should do is, if we could just kind of recap kind of in like 30 seconds or less, right? The history of these weight loss injectables. When we look at medications like Ozempic, which received its FDA approval in 2017 for, is it 2017? I think it was 2017. For diabetes. It was approved. It was an injectable that was approved for the management of diabetes in 2017. And then about a year later at the University of Leeds, they discovered that the drug could also be used to treat obesity, right? So that was something that started to be used off-label, right? This is what we call when it's off-label. It's FDA approved for diabetes, but because there's a lot of evidence that shows it's helpful in other manners, has health benefits, there doesn't seem to be anything grossly dangerous at the moment. It can be used off-label. That's where your healthcare provider looks at that research and evidence. You guys talk about the risks and benefits, and you decide if you want to take it off-label for those weight loss benefits. But in 2021, who was that? Novo Nordisk took their Ozempic and got it FDA approved as Wegovy for a weight loss indication. Now, what's the difference between Ozempic and Wegovy? They're actually the same medication. They both use semaglutide as their active ingredient. However, the difference is in the dosage. So I like to tell people, think of Wegovy weight. Wegovy is for weight loss indications. It is a higher dose of semaglutide in the medication. But anyways, you take those two, then now you have Mounjaro and Zepbound, and what's their active ingredient? Tirzepatide.
Tirzepatide. They're the combo, so they have semaglutide and tirzepatide.
Correct. But you have these medications who have been Mounjaro for diabetes, Zepbound for weight loss. But with the massive influx of people taking this, we're also starting to see more reports to the FDA. What is that thing called? The where they report the symptoms. I'm going blank on it.
Not Verse. That's the vaccine one.
That's the vaccine one. Anyways, there's a process in which whenever you're taking a medication, if you feel like you either or you think or you have a weird suspicion it might be a symptom or an adverse effect or a side effect to a medication, you should report this not only to your healthcare provider, but to the FDA
Safety Information and Adverse Event Reporting Program.
The adverse reporting program. So to go back to the story. So after Wegovy was FDA approved in 2021, in that first year alone, there were over 10,000 adverse event reports. But that was kind of quiet, hush, hush. Nobody really talked about it. And really, I hate to say this, sometimes I've seen it as a healthcare provider, and we'll get into it. I've seen where people are so, dare I use the word desperate? I'm going to go ahead and say it. It's so desperate for help and assistance with losing the weight. Not just for vanity, but for other health reasons too, but just for losing the weight. And they've been unsuccessful after multiple other attempts with other exercise, diet, and other things, that they've ignored or minimized some of the symptoms, and some have gone off to have very severe problems, pancreatitis, gastroparesis, severe diarrhea, like people have had their gallbladders removed and things like that as a result of, I would say, unchecked, unmanaged use of this medications. But the lawsuits, here's where the lawsuits come in. People are suing the manufacturers of these medications, Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, stating that they've not done their due diligence to provide information to the public about these side effects, about these adverse events. And so that's where the lawsuits are stemming from. So James, I kicked it off in an introduction. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really important for all of us to remember that this is just health and medicine, nursing. It's all much more of an art than a science, even though we call ourselves scientists. I think people have to be willing to stop and pause and understand that there are nuances in this. So you, like, to your point earlier about in the first year of this having FDA approval for weight loss, we'll just stick with semaglutide, there were thousands of reports in the adverse event reporting system. That is common for every brand new medication. But every brand new medication doesn't get the press that semaglutide has gotten.
True.
So I would argue that it's not that that was being ignored. It's that in the scientific and drug community, that's common. If you have 10 people on a medication and one of them has a bad side effect from it, and there's a difference, and this is, I think, another level of nuance that people need to understand. There are expected outcomes with the medication that include side effects, and there are adverse events. Side effects, adverse events are very different things. And so I think it's really important that if you have 10 people on a medication and then one person has a bad side effect or maybe even an adverse event, okay, when that medication then all of a sudden explodes to 1 million people, that one person turns into 10,000.
Right.
So all of a sudden people are like, 10,000 people, oh my God, had whatever gastroparesis with this medication. Yeah.
Because there's more people.
By a percentage that was going to happen. Because now, it's somewhere between 8 and 9 million people are being prescribed semaglutide in the United States.
Yes.
So that means the number of people having side effects and unfortunately adverse events, which do happen, those numbers are going to be bigger. And so they're going to make more news. It doesn't mean that the drug is necessarily that less safe, especially if you can compare it to things like aspirin and ibuprofen. I cannot tell you the number of people who come in with life-threatening GI bleeds because they've been popping ibuprofen every single day for the last 30 years. But do we have, and I'm not kidding, come in bleeding to death and or with fulminant kidney failure? Like, we need to put you on dialysis from ibuprofen, which a child can go buy at CVS.
Oh,
but we don't see these headlines talking about I'm a sue the makers of ibuprofen because I'm not saying that gastroparesis is not bad or pancreatitis or cholecystitis and all those things that these drugs can cause and do cause in some people. But I think it's about perspective. I think it's about people getting beyond the headline, actually reading and being nuanced and understanding what's going on. So I need to learn more about this actual lawsuit, whether or not I think it has merit. But at the same time, seeing the warning labels on these medications that look just like the warning labels on any other medication, and these medications having to go through the rigmarole that they had to go through with the FDA, I don't see how this lawsuit stands up. Because I think, to your point, Alice, people was just like, I don't care about any side effects or adverse, just give me the damn medication. And then when they actually messed around and they were part of the 0.05% who got gastroparesis from this and had to have a small bowel obstruction surgery, then they got mad and now they want to sue.
Yeah. And you know what? And I will say this, and I don't think there's a day that goes by that I'm not asked for or refilling someone's weight loss injectable. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? People need these medications in their weight loss journey, and I can understand that. But what I'll say, and listen, I like to talk to people before they become my patients. Now, even though we're in patient, and this is in the family practice, I'm talking about in the family practice setting. Okay, if you want to start your weight loss injectable, absolutely, that's fine. Come in, make an appointment. We need to do a physical. We need to do some labs. I need to ask you some questions. We got to get some baseline going, and then I'm going to start you on the medication, and I'm going to bring you in periodically to ask you, how are we doing with our exercise? How's our eating? Did we get, I always like to encourage therapy as a part of this. I also talk about sleeping. How's your sleeping? But the whole gamut of things you have to do. So don't message me talking about, can you just renew my medication? Ma'am, sir, I need to talk with you. I need to eyeball you. I need to see you because I feel like this is very important. It's a medication. Every medication should be taken seriously. It should. I want to do my due diligence. I want you to get to the health outcomes and goals, be healthy. The last thing I want to do is to contribute to an illness, and be your assistance with helping you get to gastroparesis. I don't want to do it. And so when I talk to people and they'll say, oh, I have some nausea and vomiting, I take that very serious.
Totally.
And I'll talk. I do absolutely. I said, well, you know what? I said these, and I will remind them, because when I start, I'm always talking about the nausea, vomiting, the diarrhea, the gastroparesis, the ileus, all these things that could happen.
Not you sounding like a Pepto-Bismol commercial.
I know, but you know, it's crazy. And some people are just like, okay, yeah. I know. I swear. They're like, yeah. Okay. I know. It's okay. Yeah, I just want to lose weight. So the claim in these lawsuits is that the pharmaceutical company has, while it's very clear in their packaging, they've said that that the pharmaceutical companies have minimized the side effects. And so I'm going to ask, so here's my two things. Was it really minimized? Or one, did you not have a conversation with your healthcare provider who prescribed it? So hopefully you just didn't pick it up around the corner and just buy it on eBay, right?
Or wherever,
right. And two, when your healthcare provider did raise a question about, like myself, I'll say, well, if you're having nausea and, vomiting or diarrhea, okay, well, let's try some dietary things. Let's look at everything. And if you're still having it, it becomes where it's just like impacting your quality of life. I'm not going to renew it. I'm going to say, you know what? I don't really think it's in your best interest to take this, or perhaps we need to go down a dose. We can't elevate the dose. Like people want to go from 0 to 100 real quickly you're supposed to titrate up slow, on this pretty slowly to make sure you adjust. But people are like, okay, 4 weeks. Okay, I'm done. Next level. No, ma'am. Sorry. Sometimes maybe you need to stay on this dose for about 3 months or so, and then we'll go up. But so my question was, did you have a talk with your healthcare provider, or did you ignore the signs and symptoms and not report them? Because some people really want to lose the weight, and they'll compromise that. Because I had someone said, just give me the damn Zofran. That's what she said to me. She said, that's okay. She said, I don't need to be eating anyway. So if I throw up, that's fine. But just give me the Zofran. Ma'am, I worked hard for this degree and this license. I'm not trying to kill you or me with this.
Said, ma'am. Ma'am.
But no lie. She said, give me the damn Zofran. She said, if I throw up, fine. I shouldn't be eating that much anyways.
But it's this next level of conversation too, Alice, about how and this is the conversation that happens a lot in, sort of body positive and fat positive communities, and that conversation in the zeitgeist, if you will, that we're so conditioned to hate not being thin, to hate not looking like an Instagram model, that we're willing to do anything. We're willing to put our health at dramatic risk. And that it's a bigger conversation about, why was this person just like, I will take on whatever risk. I don't care. Just make me skinny, versus a legitimate conversation about, hey, there are some risks with these medications. And these are the conversations that I have with people as well. Like these medications are not completely without risk. Exactly. So here are some things I need you to look out for. And we're going to go really slow. We're going to up titrate this super, super mega slow. And if something happens, we're going to stop. And that's okay. The world is not over. We will figure other things out. But we're doing this in an effort to get you healthy. Everybody say hi to Chris, by the way. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Chris. But you know what's a point here? Like when some people are willing to sacrifice, it's interesting. You want to be healthy, right? Although, you can be overweight and still be healthy, right? You still can. But in this kind of pursuit for being more slender or thin or whatever you want to call it, what's interesting is the fact that people are willing to sacrifice it. I sometimes, and this is why I like to talk to people, and I was like, I need to see, I don't want to message, I need to see your face. We got to at least video visit or something. I have to talk with you, because gastroparesis is once you have it, it's really something that you manage and rarely goes away completely. It does. It can, but it's very rare. Usually people are managing that gastroparesis lifelong once the injury has happened, to your stomach, to the muscles in there. And so I really want people to understand, I'm not trying to be a butthead. I'm not trying to get in the way of you in that size, whatever dress you're got. I promise I'm not. I promise. But it's really scary. And so when I see these lawsuits and having had some of the interactions, not everyone's like that, but sometimes I wonder, and I feel like this is where the pharmaceutical companies I feel like, I'm not a lawyer, but I feel like this is where they're going to lean. We've provided the side effects in the material. It's in all your packages. You should talk to your healthcare provider. This medication is supposed to be used under the supervision of a healthcare provider. So it assumes that we're having this oversight and frequent communication about your symptoms and management and things like that. Once you pick up the medication from the pharmacy, you have the ability to talk to a pharmacist even more about all these things. And if you're doing all these things, if you're having symptoms, you should stop. So if you've gone beyond that or ignored things, then is it really the pharmaceutical company's fault? I hate to say that because I don't want any harm to anyone, and I want people to be accountable for the things that they do. But at some point, just as much as the pharmaceutical company is responsible, just as much as we as healthcare providers are responsible. And I'll say this, and I've seen it, make sure that I really want people to have a healthcare provider that they feel comfortable with and that they trust and talk to, because there are some providers that just like, okay, you want what? Here you go, and just not even look twice at it. I care. I really care about your outcomes and want you to be healthy the safe way. But I just wonder.
Speaking of caring, by the way, I wanted to get to this comment before we run out of time. Stella on LinkedIn said, I have patients coming to me who is a DNP, APRN, FNP. I have patients coming to me from weight loss management centers that want to continue their weight loss medications with me. But when I re-educate them on the potential side/adverse events, they clearly have not been educated on these potential risks. And that's, I think, Stella, that's a great point.
Yes.
Because it's hard.
It's a $1 billion industry. I hate to say this, and I'm just going to go there. As a healthcare provider, we do no harm, right? We're not here. We are here to help you. But James, there are some people who don't walk that straight, narrow line like we do. There just aren't. That's why you see all these weight loss clinics popping up. You don't know where the stuff is coming from, especially, and I will say this, and please be very clear, semaglutide that you receive from a compounded pharmacy is not FDA approved. FDA I know people are using that.
Don't do it.
I know you're going to be mad with me, but I love you, so I have to tell you, it is not FDA approved. So we can talk about it. If there's a shortage, you can't get your medications. I understand that, but I need you to understand this, because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is your decision, your body. But I would feel horrible if I didn't give you the information you need to make an informed decision. So
yes,
just FYI.
Yes, listen, compounding pharmacies end up being good for lots of different things, for like medications that have been around for a really long time. And they can be a great way of saving money, and lots of other countries sort of lean into them more than we do. But in those other countries, they also have a more robust verification process around the medications coming out of compounding pharmacies. So just know, I don't want to poo-poo all compounding pharmacies. Like there's, I'm not here to lift up every Walgreens or whatever, but at the end of the day, you just can't verify what you're getting. Yes. And so sometimes what we've seen people in the adverse reporting and all these different things, what we've seen people is that I got X semaglutide, or what I thought was semaglutide, from a compounding pharmacy. The dose was too much, or it wasn't enough, and it was cut with something else. I had a
there
reaction
are metals
to
in
the
some
thing
of
it was
them.
cut with. Right. So, and to your point, Alice, about, I can't get my semaglutide, so I might go to a compounding pharmacy, which again is your choice.
Your choice.
I don't recommend it. This is not, I cannot say this enough times. I just said this past weekend. The 2,000 celebrities who are probably don't need to be on Zepbound or Wegovy for weight loss, but they are not the reason that your grandma can't get Ozempic because of her diabetes. It's not a one-to-one. The Real Housewives taking Ozempic are not the reason you aren't getting your Ozempic. Okay. It just doesn't work that way. It is a falsified supply-demand curve. It is the drug companies not being prepared. And, there was, I didn't read this, so I probably shouldn't even quote it, but there's some information. There's an article going around this weekend that a lot of people sent me that said it may cost them as little as $5 to make Ozempic, but they're charging in the thousands, right? If you don't have insurance or whatever. So you will hear me say this often. Healthcare is a business. Capitalism. It operates in capitalism. And so This is very common with novel medications, novel cancer therapies, novel anti-rheumatics, novel inflammatory suppressors. All those different medications are so expensive.
Yep.
And the drug companies will argue that they got to pay for their R&D, and they got to pay for all these scientists and all these people to actually have developed these things. So they put so much money up front that they need to recover their money on the back end. And to some degree, that's true. But this hating on people who maybe are taking Ozempic or Zepbound or whatever, but maybe don't necessarily need it. Sure. We prescribe a lot of medications off label. Yeah. I don't love it. I don't think it's great. I'm not advocating for it, but also it's too easy to read a headline and then point at XYZ housewife taking Ozempic is the reason that you can't get it at your pharmacy in Cleveland, Ohio. That's not why that's happening. And I want to be specifically clear on that. The other thing too, since we've been talking about these side effects, nausea, dizziness, vomiting, a little bit of abdominal cramping, diarrhea, an overwhelming feeling of satiety. That's the whole point of the medication. Those are expected side effects. Adverse events, side effects, adverse events, different things. Like what Alice was talking about, gastroparesis, pancreatitis, some of the worst abdominal pain you've ever had. You haven't pooped for 4 days, or you have had nothing but diarrhea, or you've done nothing but vomit, throwing up once or twice, a little expected when you first start the medication. Throwing up constantly for a day or two, if it starts being bloody or bilious, it looks like green or mucousy, that's a big issue. Could probably be from the medications. If you just started it, stop taking the medication, go see a healthcare provider. So are you suing because you were nauseous and you haven't also worked on your eating habits? You can't take Wegovy and then sit down and eat an entire pan pizza from Pizza Hut, even though I love to. But you can't take the Wegovy and sit down and do that while you're watching this basketball game I'm about to get back to, because it will make you throw up. But that's kind of the point. So I'm curious about, is the lawsuit coming from people who just were not explained in a really great way that Stella did, and Alicia, who are also commenting here on LinkedIn, really explained to their patients about what are the expected side effects of this medication? Or are these people suing because they were not aware of the potential adverse reactions or adverse events? And I'm curious about that.
Yeah. Few things were shared. One gentleman, severe abdominal pain for a couple weeks, and then end up having to get his gallbladder taken out. Another woman developed pancreatitis. And listen, it's speculation because I don't know everything that's involved here, but unless these things happen acutely, in the moment, I didn't even have time to call 911 to get to the hospital. As soon as you're having symptoms or side effects, even if they're expected side effects, you need to let your provider know that you're experiencing these things so they can know kind of a baseline when it started. Because it's all going to be a blur by the time you're in the emergency room screaming oh, I need Dilaudid, my tummy hurts. It's going to be all a blur. You're not going to remember when it started. You're not going to remember how many times you had loose bloody stools. You're just going to know you had them. And so I think it's real important that people whenever you start a new medication, just being hyper vigilant about what you're feeling, what you're eating, what you're doing. So that way, if anything remotely looks like, okay, a side effect, let me jot that down. This is, so what you've experienced. So when you go back to your provider, because I've seen this also, people will come back oh, everything's fine. And then I get a message, oh, I forgot to tell you that XYZ BFG. And I'm just like, sir, we was talking for 30 minutes. And what happened?
No, I do the same thing.
Dosage based on everything is fine. Then you tell me this. I need to rescind that order and let's keep you here.
And put something else up. But I do that all the time. I tell my patients constantly in the hospital, I'll literally be like, listen, I know we've been talking for 15 minutes, but I'm going to walk out of this room and you're going to remember 18 things you wanted to ask me. So make a note in your phone and start typing it in there and whatever. And when I come back around later this afternoon, or have the nurses call me, or when I see you tomorrow, whatever. Right. So we constantly forget those things, but I think there's a shared responsibility to wrap this up. on healthcare providers to be okay. It's like a parent. Like, it's not on us to be liked. It's on us to do our job and protect our patients. And then, and I think that protecting our patients and advocating for our patients includes prescribing this medication. There are a lot of healthcare providers out there who are like, I ain't doing it. I'm not on this bandwagon. You will never get me to prescribe Wegovy for anybody. They need to diet and exercise. And my answer is, you need to read the research. You need to get caught up with the science. You need to understand that your frame of mind and your thinking does not match our current science. So stop with your school from 20 years ago and get with the 2024 program. Some people need these things. But at the same time, it has to be a conversation that is like, hey, I can start you on this medication, but there's a whole bunch of stuff we got to talk about. A, this shit is expensive. B, this shit is expensive. C, this shit is expensive. And then D, like, okay, here's some expected side effects. You're going to be uncomfortable. It's not cute the first couple weeks. And then, by the way, here's the 4 or 5 like red flag signs. Like, if this goes down, I need you to get your butt to the ER. You can have that conversation in 3 minutes and change somebody's life, or you can not have that conversation in 3 minutes and change somebody's life.
Whoa, that was deep.
What you like about that? What you know about? Come on now. What you know about me putting a button on it like that? I'm gonna have to borrow that. I'm gonna have to borrow that in a keynote somewhere. Right. Hey, I know. Let me write this down. I'm gonna just start throwing off my little one-liners. I'm gonna have a whole speech. The next person who hires me for a keynote, I'm gonna just give you a whole speech of my one-liners. How about that?
There you go. That was a keynote. Thank you.
Right. That is too funny.
Okay.
All right. Well,
this was good. This was informative.
This was great. Thank you, Stella. Stella just gave me some love. On LinkedIn. Thanks,
Stella.
And Alicia, your comments. I didn't get to your comments earlier, Alicia, but you were talking about, I mean, it's a really great point. Maybe we have extend this in another show about how do we verify if providers are actually having these conversations, right? That 3-minute conversation. Like, how
I can tell you what the notes say, because we have smart phrases that say what we're supposed to say. So whether they do it, it might be different from where they chart it. Listen, I'm here for what's right. So some of y'all providers might look at me like, girl, just stop. But I'm just saying, I've seen it. And it's just, I think it's real important. And I'll say this, if your provider doesn't talk to you about it, you need to ask the question. You need to ask the questions like, hold on, I need you to tell me, what are the side effects? What are the adverse effects? What am I potentially looking at here? What are all the things that could go wrong? Tell me that. Yep. It doesn't hurt to ask that question.
And it's
so roles and responsibilities for both us as the providers and for you as the health consumer, because we're in this together. It's a partnership to try to get you to where you want to be and as healthy as possible. But we gotta communicate, gotta talk, we gotta be honest, we gotta be transparent.
It is very true. I love it. Excellent words for us to go out on, Alice.
Thank you.
Listen, like we said, we doing this every Monday at 5:00, and we had some folks watching this week, which I love. That was great. So I don't know why this wasn't on my Instagram, but I'm gonna figure that out too. So wherever we end up rewatching this from, but go on ahead, and if you're watching on my platforms and you don't follow Alice, go follow Alice at Ask Nurse Alice.
Yes,
you're on Alice.
And yes, vice versa. If you're following me, you want to follow Dr. James Timmons at Ask the MP.
Bam.
And like, share, follow, all of that good stuff. Like, share, follow, comments.
Yep, because it helps. Listen, we got to play this game on social media. We got to do this stuff. So y'all got to like this and share it and tell your friends and all this kind of stuff. Those of you who are there, we had at one point in time, we had 40 people in the room. 30 right now. Y'all are watching us instead of this basketball game, or maybe both at the same time. We love you and we thank you and appreciate this. We also please know that this is about you. So if there are topics that you have, drop them in our DMs, email us, post it up on LinkedIn or Facebook, Instagram, whatever. Let us know what you want to talk about, and we will wrap with this. We also are going to have some guests come on. We're going to pull some of y'all into the show. We're going to start kind of having some fun with this every Monday at 5. So we really appreciate y'all being here and hope you have a great evening.
Yes. Have a good evening, everyone. Make good choices. Be kind to one another. Live well, my friends.
Thanks, Mom. She said make good choices.
Yes, make good choices. I do. I say that every time to my kids. Make good choices.
Make good choices. Right. I'm like, okay, mom.